The stars were quiet around Meridian Gate. They were always quiet, but tonight they felt different to Admiral Jinho Park. He stood at the wide observation window of his flagship, the Dawn of Terra, and watched the massive ring of the gate spin slowly in the darkness. The gate was humanity's greatest treasure. It was not built by human hands. Ancient aliens had left it behind millions of years ago, and humans had found it by accident. Now it was the only door between Earth and the outer colonies, where billions of people lived. Jinho was 62 years old. His hair had turned gray long ago, and deep lines crossed his face like maps of old battles. He had served in the fleet for 40 years. He had seen war. He had seen peace. He had buried friends and watched young officers become old ones, but he had never felt this kind of cold fear in his stomach before. "Admiral," a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Lieutenant Tiho Kwon walking toward him with a tablet in his hands. Tiho was young, only 31, but his eyes carried weight that did not match his age. Jinho knew the story. 5 years ago, Tiho had made a mistake during a battle that cost 12 lives. He had been cleared of wrongdoing, but the young man had never forgiven himself. "What do you have?" Jinho asked. Tiho handed him the tablet. "The science team finished analyzing those energy readings we picked up 6 hours ago. Dr. Han wants to speak with you directly." Jinho looked at the data on the screen. Numbers and graphs filled it, but one number stood out. The energy signature was massive. It was bigger than anything natural should be. "Tell her to meet me in the command center," Jinho said, "and wake up the senior officers." 20 minutes later, Jinho stood at the head of a long table. Around him sat his most trusted officers. Captain Yuna Beek was there, commander of the destroyer Resolute. She was 45 years old with sharp eyes and a reputation for never backing down from a fight. Next to her sat Chief Engineer Yoonji Choi, who could fix anything with enough time and determination. At the far end sat Dr. Sumi Han, the station's chief science officer, her face pale under the bright lights. "Tell them what you told me," Jinho said to Sumi. Sumi stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. "The energy readings we detected are not natural. They match a pattern we have in our oldest records. It is the signature of Velrath engine technology." The room went silent. Everyone knew that name. The Velrath Dominion had attacked humanity 200 years ago in a war that had killed millions. Humanity had barely survived. Then the Velrath had simply vanished, retreating into unknown space. No one had seen them since. "Are you certain?" Yuna asked. "I am certain," Sumi replied. "There is a fleet coming toward us through uncharted space. Based on the energy output, I estimate more than 200 ships, maybe 300. Jinho felt his heart grow cold, but his face remained calm. A leader could not show fear. "How long until they arrive?" 18 hours, Sumi said, "maybe less." Jinho turned to the communication officer. "Send an emergency signal to Earth Command. Tell them what is coming. Request immediate reinforcements." The officer nodded and ran from the room. "How many ships do we have?" Yuna asked. 23, Jinho answered. "Most of them are old. 3 cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 12 support vessels." "Against 300, Tiho said quietly. The math was terrible, everyone knew it. Jinho looked at each face around the table. He saw fear, he saw doubt, but he also saw something else. He saw people who would not run away. "I need eyes on that fleet," Jinho said. "Captain Beek, take the Resolute and scout ahead. Do not engage, just observe and report back." Yuna stood immediately. "Yes, Admiral." She left the room without another word. That was what Jinho admired about her. She did not waste time with questions or complaints. She simply did what needed to be done. 4 hours later, Yuna's voice crackled through the communication system. Jinho listened from the command center of the Dawn of Terra, surrounded by worried officers. "Admiral, I have visual confirmation," Yuna reported. "The fleet is real. I count 312 warships. They are moving in attack formation. Their weapons are powered up. Jinho closed his eyes for a moment. 312. The number felt like a hammer blow. "Anything else?" he asked. "Yes, sir. They have a command ship at the center of the formation. It is massive, bigger than anything I have ever seen. I think their leader is aboard." "Return to the station, Captain. Do not let them see you." "Understood." Resolute out. Jinho opened his eyes and looked at his officers. They were all watching him, waiting for orders, waiting for hope. He walked to the main display screen and pulled up a map of the area around Meridian Gate. The gate sat at the center, spinning slowly. Around it were gravitational fields and energy currents left over from its ancient construction. "The Velrath have numbers," Jinho said, "but numbers mean nothing in a narrow passage. Look at this area here." He pointed to a corridor of space between two gravitational anomalies. "If we position our ships here, they cannot surround us. They will have to come at us in waves, a few ships at a time." Tiho studied the map. "It could work, but we would need to hold that position for hours, maybe days." "I know," Jinho said, "and that is exactly what we are going to do." He turned to face everyone. The weight of command pressed down on his shoulders, but he stood straight. "Earth's reinforcements are 42 hours away. We have to hold this gate for at least that long. If we fail, the Velrath will pour through and reach the colonies. 12 billion people will be unprotected." He paused and looked at each officer in turn. "I will not lie to you. Many of us will die in this battle. But every minute we hold is a minute for our people to prepare. Every ship we destroy is one less ship that can threaten our families." He walked to the window and looked out at the gate. It glowed softly in the darkness, beautiful and ancient. "I have served this fleet for 40 years, Jinho said quietly. "I have always known that one day I might be asked to give everything. That day has come. But I do not ask you to follow me because of orders. I ask you because you know what is right." He turned back to face them. "Will you stand with me?" One by one, every officer in the room stood up. No one spoke, no words were needed. Jinho nodded slowly. "Then let us prepare for Earth, for everyone behind us." The battle for Meridian Gate was about to begin. The next 14 hours moved fast and slow at the same time. Every person on every ship worked without rest. They checked weapons. They tested shields. They ran drills again and again until their hands moved without thinking. On the Resolute, Captain Una Beak walked through the narrow hallways of her ship. She stopped to speak with crew members, offering a word of encouragement here, a firm nod there. She knew every person aboard by name. She had served with some of them for over a decade. In the engine room, she found Chief Engineer Yoonji Choi covered in grease and sweat. Yoonji was 50 years old with strong hands and a mind that never stopped working. Around her, a team of engineers welded extra plates onto the walls. "How bad is it?" Yuna asked. Yoonji wiped her forehead with a dirty cloth. "The hull was not built for heavy combat. We are a patrol ship, not a battleship. But I am adding extra armor to the critical sections. It will not stop a direct hit, but it might give us a few extra seconds." "A few extra seconds can save lives," Yuna said. Yoonji smiled tiredly. "That is what I keep telling myself." On the other side of the station, in a cramped pilot-ready room, a young man sat alone. Ensign Minyu Yu was 23 years old. He had graduated from the academy just 6 months ago. This was supposed to be a quiet assignment, a safe way to get experience before moving to a real combat unit. Now he was about to fight in the biggest battle in 200 years. His hands would not stop shaking. The door opened and a large man walked in. Sergeant Byung-ho An was the leader of the Marine detachment on the station. He was 55 years old with a face that looked like it was carved from stone. He had fought in dozens of battles across human space. "You are the new pilot," Byung-ho said. It was not a question. Minyu stood up quickly. Yes, Sergeant, Ensign Minyu Yu. Byung-ho looked at him for a long moment. Then he sat down in the chair across from Minyu and let out a heavy breath. Sit down, boy. I'm not here to inspect you. Minyu sat. His hands were still shaking. Byung-ho noticed. First battle. Yes, Sergeant. Are you scared? Minyu wanted to lie. He wanted to say something brave, but the words would not come. Yes, he admitted quietly. I am terrified. Byung-ho nodded slowly. Good, that means you are not stupid. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. My first battle was 32 years ago, a pirate attack on a cargo convoy. I was so scared that I threw up twice before we even reached the combat zone. Minyu stared at him in surprise. You, Sergeant. Every soldier feels fear, Byung-ho said. The ones who say they do not are liars or fools. The difference between a good soldier and a dead one is not the absence of fear. It is what you do when the fear comes. He looked directly at Minyu. When you are out there, you will want to run. Every part of your brain will scream at you to flee, but you will not run. Do you know why? Minyu shook his head. Because the people next to you are depending on you. Your wingmates, your ship, your family back home. Fear is just a feeling. Duty is a choice. When the moment comes, you choose duty. Minyu let those words sink in. They did not make the fear go away, but they made it feel smaller somehow. Thank you, Sergeant, he said. Byung-ho stood up and put a heavy hand on Minyu's shoulder. Survive today, and you will have your own stories to tell scared young pilots someday. On the dawn of Terra, Admiral Jinho met with Lieutenant Tiho and Dr. Sumi in the tactical planning room. Tiho had been working on something for hours, and now he was ready to present it. I have an idea, Tiho said, pulling up diagrams on the main screen. The Velrath use a central targeting system. Their ships share sensor data through a network. If we can disrupt that network, even for a few minutes, their coordination will fall apart. Jinho studied the diagram. How do we disrupt it? By overloading our own sensor arrays and broadcasting a massive burst of interference. It will blind them temporarily. Sumi frowned. That much energy output could affect the gate. The wormhole is held stable by precise gravitational fields. If we disturb those fields, there could be consequences. What kind of consequences? Jinho asked. I do not know exactly, Sumi admitted. The gate might flicker, it might destabilize. In the worst case, it could collapse. Tiho looked troubled. I did not realize the risk was that high. Jinho thought carefully. Disrupting the enemy would save lives, but damaging the gate could doom the colonies. Keep working on the plan, he decided, but we only use it if we have no other choice. 3 hours before the expected attack, the Velrath arrived early. The alarm siren screamed throughout every ship and station. Jinho ran to the command center and took his position. Report, he shouted. Enemy fleet just dropped out of their faster-than-light travel, an officer called out. They are 200,000 kilometers out and closing fast. Jinho looked at the display screen. Red dots filled the right side, representing the enemy fleet. Blue dots clustered on the left, representing his tiny force. The difference was terrifying. All ships move to defensive positions, Jinho ordered. Formation Delta, hold the corridor. The human fleet moved. 23 ships arranged themselves in a wall across the narrow gravitational corridor. The cruisers formed the center. The destroyers took the flanks. Smaller ships filled the gaps. On the Resolute, Yuna stood on her bridge and watched the enemy approach. The ships were massive and dark, covered in sharp angles and strange markings. All hands to battle stations, she announced through the ship's speakers. This is Captain Beak. I will not give you a long speech. You know what is coming. You know why we fight. Today, we show the universe what humans are made of. In his fighter, Minyu gripped the controls and tried to breathe. Around him, 11 other pilots waited in their own ships. They were Black Wolf Squadron. Half of them were rookies like him. The other half were veterans who had seen combat before. "Black Wolves, this is Wolf Leader," the squadron commander said over the radio. "Stay in formation. Follow my lead. Watch your wingmates back and they will watch yours." The Velrath fleet stopped at 100,000 kilometers. For a long moment, nothing happened. Both sides stared at each other across the dark void. Then the Velrath opened fire. Bright beams of energy shot across space. The first volley hit the cruiser Valiant. Its shields flared bright and held, but only barely. "Return fire," Jinho commanded. Every human ship fired at once. Missiles and energy beams streaked toward the enemy. The corridor strategy worked. The Velrath could only send a portion of their fleet into the narrow passage. The rest had to wait. But even a portion of 300 ships was overwhelming. 2 minutes into the battle, the destroyer Swift Justice exploded. Its reactor was hit directly, and the entire ship vanished in a ball of fire. "Swift Justice is gone," an officer reported, voice shaking. 140 souls. Jinho felt each death like a knife in his heart, but he could not stop. He could not mourn, not yet. "Close the gap," he ordered. "Do not let them through." Another ship exploded, then another. The battle for Meridian Gate had truly begun, and it was only the first hour. Yuna pushed her ship forward into the chaos. The Resolute was taking hits, but Yunji's extra armor was holding. Around her, the human fleet was bleeding, but it was not breaking. "Not yet. Hold the line." Jinho's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "For Earth, for everyone behind us." And somehow, impossibly, they held. 6 hours into the battle, the space around Meridian Gate had become a graveyard. Broken ships floated among the stars. Debris clouds spread like dark fog. Emergency beacons flashed everywhere, marking escape pods that drifted in the void, waiting to be rescued or forgotten. Admiral Jinho stood at his command station. He had not slept. He had not eaten. His eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching the red and blue dots dance their deadly dance. 7 human ships were gone now, but the Velrath had paid a heavy price too. 53 of their vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The corridor strategy was working. In the narrow passage, the enemy's numbers meant nothing. They could only attack a few ships at a time, and the human defenders made them pay for every meter they advanced. But Jinho knew the math was still against them. At this rate, his fleet would be gone in another 10 hours. Earth's reinforcements were still 36 hours away. "Admiral," Lieutenant Tiho called from his station, "the enemy is changing tactics. They are sending their cruisers forward in tight formation." Jinho looked at the display. The young officer was right. The Velrath were grouping their largest ships together, creating a battering ram of firepower. "They want to punch through our center," Jinho realized. "All ships reinforce the center line. Concentrate fire on the lead cruiser." The human fleet obeyed. Energy beams and missiles converged on the first Velrath cruiser. Its shields glowed bright under the assault, flickering like a dying candle. Finally, they collapsed, and the cruiser exploded in a massive fireball. But 2 more cruisers took its place. On the Resolute, Captain Yuna saw what was happening. The center line was weakening. If those cruisers broke through, they would get behind the human formation and attack from both sides. "Helm, bring us about," Yuna ordered. "Full speed toward the enemy cruisers." Her bridge crew looked at her in shock. "Captain, that will put us directly in their line of fire," her first officer said. "I know, but if they break the center, we lose everything. Follow my orders." The Resolute turned and accelerated toward the enemy. It was a small ship facing giants, but Yuna had a plan. "Target their engines," she commanded. "If we cannot destroy them, we can slow them down." The Resolute opened fire. Its weapons were not strong enough to pierce the cruiser's front shields, but the engines were at the back, less protected. One shot found its mark, and the lead cruiser began to drift, its propulsion damaged. The other two cruisers turned their guns on the Resolute. Energy beams slammed into the small destroyer. The whole ship shook violently. Consoles exploded. Crew members were thrown to the floor. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted. "Seal it off." Yuna grabbed her chair to stay standing. "Keep firing." Another hit, then another. The Resolute was taking terrible punishment, but it was buying time. Behind it, the human center line regrouped and pushed the remaining cruisers back. In the fighter battle raging around the larger ships, Ensign Minyu was fighting for his life. His squadron had been in combat for hours. They were exhausted, they were scared, and they were dying. Half of Black Wolf's squadron was gone. Minyu had watched his wingmate explode just 10 minutes ago. A Velrath fighter had come from nowhere and destroyed him before Minyu could even react. Now Minyu flew alone, dodging enemy fire and trying to stay alive. A Velrath fighter locked onto his tail. Warning alarms screamed in his cockpit. He twisted and turned, but the enemy was faster. "This is it," Minyu thought. "This is how I die." Then another human fighter swept in from the side and blasted the enemy away. "You are clear, Wolf 7, a voice said over the radio. It was Wolf Leader, the squadron commander. "Stay with me." "Thank you, Leader," Minyu gasped. "I thought I was dead." "Not today, form on my wing. We have a job to do." Minyu followed his commander toward a Velrath command ship. It was coordinating the enemy fighters in this sector. If they could destroy it, the enemy's organization would fall apart. "Wolf Leader to all remaining wolves," the commander announced. "We are making a run on the command ship. Stay tight. Do not break formation until we reach the target." 4 fighters. That was all that remained of Black Wolf's squadron. 4 fighters against a ship that was 50 times their size. They dove toward the command ship. Enemy fire filled the space around them. One fighter was hit and spun away, trailing smoke. Then another was destroyed. Only Minyu and Wolf Leader remained. "Target the bridge," Wolf Leader ordered. "Fire everything you have." Both fighters unleashed their remaining missiles. The weapons streaked toward the command ship's bridge. Explosions blossomed across its surface. The command ship began to fall, its bridge destroyed, its crew dead. "We did it," Minyu shouted. But his celebration was cut short. A Velrath beam caught Wolf Leader's fighter directly. The ship exploded instantly. "Leader," Minyu screamed, but there was no response. Wolf Leader was gone. Minyu was alone now, the last wolf. Back on the Dawn of Terra, Admiral Jinho made a decision. The battle was turning against them. They needed the sensor disruption plan. "Lieutenant Tiho, prepare the interference burst," he ordered. Tiho looked up with worried eyes. "Admiral, Dr. Han warned that it could damage the gate." "I know the risks, but if we do not do something, we will not survive the next few hours. Prepare the burst." Dr. Sumi Han was called to the command center. Her face was pale when she arrived. "You are really going to do this?" she asked. "I am," Jinho replied. "Can you minimize the danger to the gate?" Sumi thought for a moment. "I can adjust the frequency of the burst. It will be less effective against the enemy, but it should reduce the impact on the gate's stability." "Do it." The preparations took 20 minutes. During that time, another human ship was destroyed. 16 ships remained. The Velrath were pressing harder now, sensing that the humans were weakening. "Burst is ready," Tiho announced. "Fire." A wave of energy spread out from the Dawn of Terra. It was invisible to the eye, but its effects were immediate. Across the Velrath fleet, targeting systems went dark. Ships that had been firing with precision suddenly shot wildly in random directions. Chaos erupted among the enemy. "All ships press the attack," Jinho commanded. "Hit them while they are blind." The human fleet surged forward. For the first time in hours, they were on the offensive. Velrath's ships fell one after another, unable to coordinate their defense. But then Sumi grabbed Jinho's arm. Her face was white with fear. "The gate," she whispered. Jinho turned to look. The Meridian gate, which had been spinning steadily for millennia, was flickering. Its light pulsed unevenly. Strange energy crackled along its surface. "Is it going to collapse?" Jinho asked. Sumi stared at her readings. "Not yet, but it is destabilizing. If we push it any further, we might not be able to stop the process." Jinho looked at the gate, then at the battle. The Velrath were recovering from the interference burst. In a few minutes, they would regain their coordination. He had bought time, but at what cost? 12 hours into the battle now. 9 human ships remained. The Velrath had lost 140 vessels, but they still had 170 more. And the gate was dying. Jinho closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them again, his face was made of stone. "We hold," he said quietly. "Whatever it takes, we hold." The Velrath commander had seen enough. For 18 hours, a handful of human ships had held back the mightiest fleet his empire had ever assembled. 140 of his ships floated dead in space. His officers were whispering that the humans were demons, that they could not be defeated. He would prove them wrong. "All remaining ships attack at once," he commanded from his massive flagship. "No more waves, no more caution, overwhelm them." 170 Velrath warships surged forward together. The gravitational corridor that had protected the humans meant nothing now. The enemy was willing to take losses to break through. On the dawn of Terra, Admiral Jinho watched the wave of red dots rush toward his tiny blue force. "This is it," he said quietly. His flagship shook as enemy fire slammed into its shields. Around him, officers shouted reports. Fires broke out on lower decks. The lights flickered. "Admiral, we have lost the cruiser Mountain," an officer called out. "The destroyer Northern Star is gone. Shield generators are failing." Jinho gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. The dawn of Terra was dying around him, but he would not leave. A captain stayed with his ship. An admiral stayed with his fleet. "All ships fall back to the gate," Jinho ordered. "Form a final defensive ring." Only 7 ships remained now, 7 against 170. On the Resolute, Captain Yuna heard the order. Her ship was barely functioning. Half the decks were open to space. The engines were running on emergency power. Chief Engineer Yunji had been working miracles to keep them fighting, but even miracles had limits. "Captain," her first officer said, "the dawn of Terra's communications are down. I think the Admiral is hurt." Yuna felt cold fear grip her heart, but she pushed it away. There was no time for fear. "Then I am taking command of the fleet," she announced. Her voice was calm and steady. "All ships, this is Captain Beak. Form on the Resolute. We make our stand at the gate." The surviving ships gathered around her. 4 destroyers and 2 support vessels, against an armada. But as she looked at the faces of her crew, she did not see defeat. She saw determination. She saw pride. She saw people who would rather die standing than live on their knees. "Open a channel to all ships," Yuna said. Her communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Yuna took a deep breath. "This is Captain Yuna Beak of the Resolute. I know you are tired. I know you are scared. I know many of you have lost friends today, but I need you to hold on a little longer." She paused, looking out at the approaching enemy fleet. "Behind us is the gate. Behind the gate is Earth. Behind Earth are our families, our children, everyone we have ever loved. The enemy thinks they can break us. They think that because we are few, we are weak." Her voice grew stronger. "They are wrong. We are not weak. We are the wall between them and everything that matters. And walls do not break. Walls do not run. Walls stand until there is nothing left to stand with." She drew herself up straight. "Today we are that wall. Today we hold. Not because we can win, but because surrender is not who we are. This is what it means to be human. This is our finest hour. Across the fleet, crews who had been ready to give up found new strength. Hands that had been shaking steadied on controls. Hearts that had been heavy filled with fire. On Meridian Station, Sergeant Byung-ho An led his Marines toward the docking bay. A Velrath assault ship had attached itself to the station's outer hull and was cutting through. If they got inside, they would reach the civilians who had been evacuated to the inner sections. Byung-ho would not let that happen. "Listen up," he told his Marines. "Those aliens want to get to our people. We are the only thing in their way. I do not care how many of them there are. We hold this corridor. Understood?" "Yes, Sergeant," 20 voices shouted back. The cutting stopped. The hull section fell away and Velrath soldiers poured through the breach. They were tall, armored in black, with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Byung-ho raised his rifle and fired. The corridor became a storm of light and sound. Marines fell. Velrath fell. The floor grew slick with blood of 2 species, but Byung-ho kept fighting, kept pushing, kept holding. A Velrath blade cut across his arm. He ignored the pain and shot the alien in the face. Another enemy came at him. He broke its neck with his bare hands. "Fall back to the second barrier," he shouted to his remaining Marines. Only 8 were still standing. They retreated, fighting every step. Byung-ho was the last one through the emergency door. He slammed it shut and sealed it just as enemy fire melted the metal on the other side. "That will hold them for a few minutes," he said, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his wounded arm. Enough time for the civilians to reach the escape pods. "Sergeant, you need medical attention," a young Marine said. "Later, right now, we have a job to do." Back in space, the battle reached its final stage. The Resolute and its small group of ships fought desperately against the Velrath swarm. Ships exploded on both sides. The gate flickered and pulsed behind them. On the dawn of Terra, Admiral Jinho woke up. He had been knocked unconscious by an explosion. His head was bleeding and his right arm hung useless at his side. But he was alive. He looked around the ruined command center. Half his officers were dead. Fires burned everywhere. Through the cracked observation window, he could see the battle raging outside. And he could see the gate. It was destabilizing faster now. Dr. Sumi had warned him that the interference burst would damage it. But looking at the readings on a half-broken console, he saw something else. The gate's instability was building toward a critical point. If it collapsed, it would release a massive wave of energy. A wave that could destroy everything nearby, including the Velrath fleet. Jinho limped to the communication station. It was damaged but partially functional. "Dr. Han," he said into the microphone. "Dr. Han, can you hear me?" Static, then Sumi's voice came through, weak but clear. "Admiral, you are alive." "Barely. Doctor, I need to know something. If the gate collapses, what happens?" Silence. Then, it would release all its stored energy at once, a sphere of destruction spreading outward. Everything within 500,000 kilometers would be vaporized. Including us, including the enemy. Including everything. Jinho closed his eyes. This was the choice he had feared. Destroy the gate to destroy the enemy. Save humanity by cutting it in half. The colonies would be separated from Earth for years, maybe decades. But they would be alive. "Can you trigger the collapse deliberately?" he asked. More silence. When Sumi spoke again, her voice was shaking. "Yes, but Admiral, once I start the process, there is no stopping it. We would have maybe 5 minutes to evacuate. Then we evacuate. All ships, all stations, everything. We run as fast as we can, and we hope we are faster than the explosion." He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Jinho. Prepare for immediate evacuation. We are collapsing the gate." Captain Yuna's voice came back immediately. "Admiral, If we destroy the gate, the colonies will be cut off. I know, Jinho said, but the colonies will survive. If we do not do this, the Velrath will pour through and destroy everything. A closed door is better than an open grave. He paused. The gate can be rebuilt. Lives cannot. Prepare for evacuation. That is an order. There was a long moment of silence. Then Yuna's voice returned, quiet but firm. Understood, Admiral. It has been an honor. The honor has been mine, Captain. Now let us finish this. The evacuation began immediately. Every surviving ship turned away from the battle and raced toward safety. Escape pods launched from Meridian Station like seeds scattered in the wind. The Velrath, confused by the sudden retreat, pressed their attack even harder, thinking victory was finally within reach. They had no idea what was coming. Dr. Sumi Han stood at her console in the station's science center. Her hands moved across the controls, inputting the sequence that would destroy the gate. Around her, alarms screamed and the station shook from enemy fire. Dr. Han, we need to go, a technician shouted. 1 more minute, Sumi replied. Her voice was calm, but her heart was pounding. She was about to collapse an ancient wonder that had existed for millions of years. She was about to cut humanity in half. But she was also about to save billions of lives. The final command was entered. The console beeped twice. Sequence initiated, she announced. We have 4 minutes and 30 seconds. She ran. On the Resolute, Captain Yuna pushed her damaged ship to its limits. The engines screamed in protest. Warning lights covered every console, but they were moving, putting distance between themselves and the gate. How much time? She asked. 3 minutes, 40 seconds, her first officer replied. Through the observation window, Yuna watched the Meridian gate. It was spinning faster now, its light pulsing erratically. Energy crackled across its surface like lightning. The Velrath fleet, still focused on pursuit, did not seem to notice. Or maybe they did not understand. 2 minutes. The gate was now glowing so bright it hurt to look at directly. The Velrath flagship, that massive command ship at the center of their fleet, was closest to the gate. Its commander had probably never seen anything like this. He probably still thought he was winning. 1 minute. Some of the Velrath ships were finally turning away, their sensors detecting the dangerous energy buildup. But it was too late for them, far too late. 30 seconds. Yuna grabbed the arms of her chair. All hands brace for impact. 10 seconds. The Meridian gate collapsed. It did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, it imploded first, folding in on itself like a dying star. For one terrible instant, everything was dark and silent. Then the energy released. A sphere of pure white light expanded outward at incredible speed. It swallowed the Velrath flagship instantly, then the cruisers around it, then the destroyers, then everything else. Ship after ship vanished into the light. The Resolute was hit by the edge of the shockwave. The entire ship was thrown forward like a toy. Crew members were slammed against walls. Consoles exploded. The lights went out. When Yuna opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of her bridge. Her ears were ringing. She could taste blood in her mouth, but she was alive. Report, she croaked. Engines are offline, someone said in the darkness. Life support is on emergency backup, but we are alive, Captain. Yuna pulled herself up and looked out the cracked observation window. Where the Meridian gate had been, there was nothing, just empty space and a slowly fading glow. And floating in that space were the remains of the Velrath fleet, broken ships, scattered debris. Nothing moved, nothing lived. The enemy was gone. The evacuation had worked. All 5 surviving human ships had escaped the blast radius. Most of the station's escape pods had made it out too. The losses were terrible. Thousands had died, but thousands more had survived. Admiral Jinho's voice crackled over the radio, weak but alive. All ships, Report status. One by one, the survivors responded. The Resolute, the Destroyer Faithful, 3 support ships, 5 vessels out of 23. We held, Jinho said quietly. Against all odds we held. In his fighter, Ensign Minyu sat in silence. His ship had barely survived the shockwave. His oxygen was running low and his navigation system was broken. But none of that mattered. He was looking at the empty space where the gate had been. Somewhere behind that space were the outer colonies. His family lived there. His parents, his younger sister. They were now cut off from Earth, possibly for decades. But they were safe. The Velrath could not reach them anymore. A rescue shuttle found him an hour later. When the crew opened his cockpit, they found him crying silently, still staring at the stars. 2 days after the battle, Admiral Jinho recorded his final report. He sat in a borrowed office on one of the surviving ships. His arm was in a cast. Bandages covered half his face, but his eyes were clear as he spoke into the recording device. This is Admiral Jinho Park, commanding officer of the United Earth Fleet 7th Division. On this day, we faced the Velrath Dominion at Meridian Gate. We were 23 ships against 312. We fought for 19 hours. We lost 18 ships and over 6,000 brave men and women. He paused to steady his voice. I take full responsibility for the destruction of the Meridian Gate. This decision has separated the outer colonies from Earth. Billions of people are now cut off from their homeworld. I understand that some will call this a betrayal. I understand that I may face judgment for my actions. He looked directly at the recording device. But I would make the same choice again. The gate can be rebuilt. Lives cannot. Every person in those colonies is alive today because we chose to close the door rather than let the enemy through. That is what victory looks like sometimes. Not glory, not celebration, just survival. He reached to turn off the recorder, then stopped. To the families of those who fell at Meridian Gate, I offer no words that can heal your pain. I can only promise that their sacrifice will never be forgotten. They held the line when holding seemed impossible. They gave everything so that others could live. He took a deep breath. Jinho Park, Admiral, United Earth Fleet. End of report. 12 years later, Admiral Jinho stood at the observation deck of the newly built Meridian Station. He was 74 now, retired from active service, but invited as an honored guest for this historic day. Before him, a new gate was activating for the first time. It had taken a decade to build, using both human technology and knowledge recovered from the ancient alien artifacts. It was smaller than the original gate, but it worked just the same. Beside him stood Commodore Unibeak. Her hair had touches of gray now, and she wore the medals of a decorated veteran on her chest. Hard to believe it has been 12 years, she said. Time moves strangely when you are old, Jinho replied with a slight smile. The new gate hummed to life. Its ring began to spin. A blue light filled its center, stable and bright. First contact with the colonies in 12 years, Yuna said. I wonder how much has changed. People adapt, Jinho said. They always do. That is what makes us human. The first ships began to pass through the gate. Transport vessels filled with families who had been separated for over a decade. People waved from observation windows. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some did both at the same time. Yuna watched them in silence for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been in her heart for 12 years. Was it worth it? Jinho did not answer immediately. He watched the ships pass through, carrying thousands of people home. He thought about the 6,000 who had died at the battle. He thought about the years of separation. He thought about all the pain and loss and sacrifice. Then he saw a little girl on one of the transports, pressing her face against the window, eyes wide with wonder. She was maybe 7 years old. She had been born in the colonies, and this was her first time seeing Earth's sun. Every moment, Jinho said softly, The next day, a memorial ceremony was held at the station. Dignitaries from Earth and all the colonies attended, but the most important part was the memorial wall. It was made of black stone, polished so smooth it reflected the stars. On it were carved the names of every person who had died at the Battle of Meridian Gate, over 6,000 names, arranged in neat rows. At the bottom of the wall, larger than the rest, were words that Jinho had chosen himself. They held the line. People came to the wall throughout the day, veterans who had survived the battle, families of those who had not, young officers who had only read about the battle in history books. As the day ended, only one person remained. Minyu Yu, now 35 years old and a captain himself, stood before the wall with his hand pressed against the cold stone. He found the name he was looking for, Wolf Leader, Kim Jihwan, his commander who had saved his life and then lost his own. "I kept my promise," Minyu whispered. "I survived, and I have my own stories now to tell scared young pilots." He stepped back and saluted the wall. The stars shone down on Meridian Station. The new gate spun peacefully in the darkness, and somewhere in the vast reaches of space, the spirits of 6,000 heroes rested at last, knowing that their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had held the line, and they always would.